Hello, my friends, it's Dani, and welcome to week 4 in my 10-week intuitive eating series. Now, if you are new to this series, let me start by reminding you that I'm basing this series on the intuitive eating book and workbook. So if you're interested in really taking a deep dive into this work, I will leave links to both of those books down in the description box below. Also, if you've missed the first 3 videos, I will also link to those down in the description box below because all of these videos kind of build on each other. So it's nice to watch them as they go along. So this week we're going to be chatting all about the food police. What exactly is the food police? Well, the food police is a combination of a collective cultural voice and a voice that lives inside our head that's always telling us what we should and shouldn't be eating. It's that voice that's telling you that this is a good food and this is a bad food, and this food is right and this food is wrong, and if you eat this food, you're good, and if you eat that food, you're bad. Many of us tend to have this food police living deep down in our psyche, and it has all kinds of judgments and critiques around the food that we're eating and the foods that we should be eating. Now, many of these thoughts and beliefs have been unconsciously absorbed from our environment, right? So from diet culture, from magazines, from things you watch, from things you read, from advertising. We can also get it from the people we're around, right? So maybe you grew up in a household that was very focused on food or always in a diet type of mentality. Maybe it was your friends or your peers, right? This information can be coming to us from a lot of different places. And for many of us, we absorb the belief systems and the thoughts unconsciously. Now, we've touched on this before, but what happens for so many of us is when we start labeling foods as good or bad, then what happens is when we eat those foods, now we're labeling ourselves as good or bad. And when we eat one of the bad foods, right, then that follows up with feelings of guilt and shame. And the irony is, it's that our internal desire to soothe ourselves from the discomfort of those emotions can actually lead us to eating more food than we would have initially eaten had we just stayed moderate and kind inside of our minds. People who have a history of dieting are especially prone to feel guilty when they eat foods that they have decided are bad foods, right? So maybe a food like a cookie or a bagel or a French fry. And the food media knows this, and they know how to take advantage of this. For instance, if you feel guilty when you eat a certain food, you're going to start to notice how companies are trying to sell us guilt-free options. They know how to tap in to that emotional need, right? Really what we want is to not feel the guilt or the shame. That change is going to come from our minds, right? But the hook is they sell us a product that is apparently going to give us a guilt-free experience. So for example, Snackwell's, right? Their tagline is "Be bad, snack well." Or there's a company called The Guiltless Gourmet, and they sell a line of fat-free products. So with this type of marketing constantly coming at us, it makes it hard for eating to just be normal without being good or bad. So the first thing that we want to do is become self-aware of our internal food talk. Self-awareness is the ability to be able to observe and notice your thoughts without being one with them, right? So we can actually stand back and see the thoughts without being attached to the thoughts. We want to continue to practice to create a non-judgmental awareness of the thoughts that we're thinking. Because the thing is, it's very difficult to change something that you don't understand. So step 1 is always going to be this level of awareness. Some of the very popular food thoughts that can run through one's mind would include things like, ooh, I really shouldn't eat past 6 p.m. or bread is fattening, or I shouldn't have any carbs, or salt is bad for me, I can't have any salt, or fat is bad for me, I shouldn't be having any fat. So those are just some of the popular ones, but they really do go on and on and on. So the very first step is going to be to become aware of some of these internal food thoughts that you carry in your mind. And then once you have that awareness, begin to gently redirect these thoughts to thoughts that are more aligned with your intention of creating a kind and nourishing relationship with food and your body. Something that I really do not believe is reiterated and or taught to us often enough, this is in my humble opinion, I really think this is something that should be being taught in elementary schools, is that our thoughts create our feelings drive our actions, and our actions ultimately create our results. So when we really want to approach a change for ourselves, we have to know what's going on inside of our minds. So for instance, let's say that you have a thought that cookies are bad, right? If you're thinking to yourself cookies are bad and then you are around a cookie, there is a good chance that that's going to evoke feelings of being uneasy, maybe nervous, a little bit anxious when you're around a cookie. And God forbid you should actually take a bite of that cookie. We can send ourselves into thinking that might sound something like, OMG, what is wrong with me? Why did I do that? I should know better. I'm never gonna get this right. I'm never gonna figure this out. And then the stress of that thinking is going to make us feel guilty. It's gonna make us feel ashamed of ourselves, and those feelings often drive us to either overeat or to go into extremely restrictive patterns of not eating enough. What I want you to see is that both of these are driven by the initial judgment around the cookie. Now, let's say on the flip side of that, you had a thought about cookies that sounded something like this. Hey, it's perfectly normal to want to eat a cookie sometimes, right? That thought creates a very different emotional response. It's much more at ease and a lot more relaxed. And then when you are with that cookie, you can just eat the cookie and be done with the cookie when you're done with the cookie, right? Enjoy the cookie. There doesn't have to be a lot of pressure and stress and charge around the cookie. So you can see how what we think about a food can really affect how and what we end up eating. If you have a lot of rules and judgments around specific foods and foods that you are eating, then you're going to create a lot of uneasy emotion for yourself. And it's that uneasy emotion that drives weird habits with food. And I do want you guys to notice that this doesn't mean that if you eat a food and your body gives you feedback, you can then say, hey, maybe this food doesn't work for me. Right? Because I know I had some questions in the comments that were like, oh, when I eat this, I break out. Should I eat it anyway? Is that a strict food rule? And so what you really want to practice kind of separating here is the difference between feedback from your body and thoughts and judgments from your mind. This is a practice of learning to tune into your body and then honor and respect what it is telling you versus collecting all of this nutritional data in our mind and trying to micromanage and control the whole show. Can you see the difference there? So again, the first thing we have to do is create that self-awareness, become aware of the thoughts that we're thinking, and then we can begin to slowly and kindly and gently shift them so that they are in better alignment with what our true intentions are, right? And again, those intentions are creating that kind and nourishing relationship with food. I am not suggesting, by the way, that this is an overnight fix. It most definitely is not. As a matter of fact, I know that some of these food rules and the ideas we have in our head can be hard to shake loose, right? When you're thinking something for a long time, it becomes like an ingrained habit. And so it can take some time to shift those things, but that doesn't mean it is not worth the effort. It's absolutely worth the effort. And simply setting intentions to start moving in a different direction is how the process begins. And the last thing I want to address is that I really want you to be on the lookout for, be aware of, be conscious of all or nothing thinking. The goal is not for you to become the perfect intuitive eater, right? That would just be another attempt at dieting. If there's anything I've discovered for myself, that dieting is ultimately a way of thinking. It is a all or nothing perfectionist approach to food, but you can have a dieter's mentality around other things in life. It's not only food because it's a way of being and a way of showing up. So I just want you to be aware of that and always make kindness and self-compassion priority number one, and then things will flow a lot easier from that space. Okay, so now for those of you who want to have some exercises to practice for the week, I want you to grab that pen, pull out that journal. The first thing you're gonna do is start to become aware of the food police that is in your mind. I want you to start writing down some of the thoughts and the judgments that you have around specific foods. What are they? Get them onto paper. I mean, you can really notice, are they in your mind? Is it something you grew up with? Is it something you remember reading? Wherever they came from, it doesn't really matter. What matters is they're now inside of your mind, and we want to get them out of your mind and onto the paper so we can really become aware of them. And then the second thing I want you to do is pick out the heavy hitters. So the thoughts that you find yourself thinking over and over again, the ones that are really common for you. Write them out and then we are going to counter them. So what I like to do is I will write the heavy hitters on the left side of my paper, and then on the right side of my paper, I will redefine them for myself. So if you have an idea that a cookie is bad, you can say, here's the heavy hitter, a cookie is bad. And then you can come over onto the other side of the paper and say, hey, it's totally normal to sometimes want to eat a cookie. Right? So what you're trying to do is soften that statement and create more ease and relaxation for yourself so that when you're around these foods, they don't have this charge that is ultimately being driven by the restriction and the deprivation. Okay? So that is what I would love for you to practice this week. And as you guys know, I absolutely adore the conversations that go down in the comment section below. So if you have any thoughts, ideas, experiences, aha moments, please don't hesitate to come down and share and continue to support one another as well. I really want this to feel like a safe environment where we can open up to each other and know that we're not alone. And please do, if you know anybody who could benefit from this series, pass it along. Let's go on ahead and share the good word. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will be back here next Tuesday with video number 5 in this 10-week series, and we are going to be talking all about feeling your fullness. Thanks again, guys. I'm Dani Spies, and I'll see you back here next week with some more food for thought. Cheers. So again, we really just want to begin to create an awareness around these thoughts so that we can then gently begin to... Somebody here? Is that male? What I like, I do. What I like, I do. What I like, I do.